The complete works of Swami Vivekananda, Karam Yoga, Chapter 7, Freedom, Part 1. In addition to meaning work, we have stated that psychologically the word karam also implies causation. Any work, any action, any thought that produces an effect is called a karam. Thus, the law of karam means the law of causation, of inevitable cause and sequence. Wheresoever there is a cause, there is an effect that must be produced. This necessity cannot be resisted, and this law of karma, according to our philosophy, is true throughout the whole universe. Whatever we see or feel or do, whatever action there is anywhere in the universe, while being the effect of past work on the one hand, it becomes on the other a cause in its turn and produces its own effect. It is necessary, together with this, to consider what is meant by the word law. By law is meant the tendency of a series to repeat itself. When we see one event followed by another, or sometimes happening simultaneously with another, we expect this sequence or coexistence to reoccur. Our old logicians and philosophers of the Nyaya school called this law by the name Vyapti. According to them, all our ideas of law are due to association. A series of phenomena becomes associated with things in our mind in a sort of invariable order, so that whatever we perceive at any time is immediately referred to other facts in the mind. Any one idea, or according to our psychology, any one wave that is produced in the mind stuff chitta, must always give rise to many similar waves. This is called psychological idea of association. And causation is only one aspect of this grand, pervasive principle of association. This pervasiveness of association is what is in Sanskrit called Vyapti. In the external world, the view of law is the same as in the internal. The expectation that a particular phenomenon will be followed by another, and that the series will repeat itself. Really speaking, therefore, law does not exist in nature. Practically, it is an error to say that gravitation exists in the earth, or that there is any law existing objectively anywhere in nature. Law is the method, the manner in which our mind grasps a series of phenomena. It is all in the mind. Certain phenomena happening one after another or together, and followed by the conviction of the regularity of their occurrence, enable our minds to grasp the method of the whole series, and that is what constitutes law as we know it. The next question for consideration is what is meant by law being universal. Our universe is that portion of existence which is categorized by what the Sanskrit psychologists call Desh Kala Nimitta, or what is known in European psychology as space, time, and causation. This universe is only a part of the infinite existence, thrown into a peculiar mold composed of space, time, and causation. It necessarily follows that law is possible only when within this conditioned universe, but beyond there it cannot be any law. When we speak of the universe, we only mean that portion of existence which is limited by our mind. The universe of the senses, which we can see, feel, touch, hear, think of, and imagine. This alone is under law, but beyond it, existence cannot be subject to law, because causation does not extend beyond the world of our minds. anything beyond the range of our minds and our senses, is not bound by the law of causation. And there is no mental association of things in the region beyond the senses, and no causation without the association of ideas. It is only when being or existence gets molded into name and form that it obeys the law of causation, and it is said to be under law, because all law has its essence in causation. Therefore, we see at once that there cannot be any such thing as free will. The very words are a contradiction, because will is what we know, and everything that we know is within our universe, and everything within our universe is molded by the conditions of space, time, and causation. Everything that we know or can possibly know must be subject to causation, and that which obeys the law of causation cannot be free. It is acted upon by other agents and becomes a cause in its turn. But that which has become converted into the will, and therefore was not the will before, but which, when it fell into the mold of space, time, and causation, became converted into the human will, is free. And when this will gets out of the mold of space, time, and causation, it will become free again. From freedom it comes and becomes molded into this bondage, and it gets out and goes back into freedom again. The question has been raised as to from whom this universe comes, in whom it rests, and to whom it goes. And the answer has been given that from freedom it comes, in bondage it rests. And the answer that has been given that from freedom it comes, to bondage it rests, and goes back into that freedom again. So when we speak of a man as no other than that infinite being which is manifesting itself, we mean that only one small part of thereof is man. This body and this mind, which we see, are only one part of the whole, one small part of the infinite being. This whole universe is only one speck of the infinite being, and all our laws, our bondages, our small universe, all our progression and digression are within its small compass. So you see how childish it is to expect a continuation of this universe, the creation of our minds, and to expect to go to heaven, which after all must mean only a repetition of the world that we know. Yet, see at once that it is an impossible and childish desire to make the whole of infinite existence conform to the limited and conditioned existence which we know. When a man says that he will have again and again this same thing which he is hating now, or as I sometimes put it, when he asks for a comfortable religion, you may know that he has become so degenerate that he cannot think of anything higher than what he has now. He is just a little present surroundings and nothing more. He has forgotten his infinite nature, and his whole idea is confined to these little joys and sorrows and heart jealousies of the moment. He thinks that this finite thing is the infinite. And not only so, he will not let this foolishness go. He clings on desperately unto Trishna and the thirst after life, what the Buddhists call Tanha and Tisa. There may be millions of kinds of happiness and beings and laws and progress and causation, all acting outside the little universe that we know. And after all, the whole of this comprises but one section of our infinite nature.